right, it is Wednesday, January 13th, and the Pittsburgh Steelers just turned the ball over again. Welcome to the Zero Technique Football Podcast. All right, welcome into the Zero Technique Football Podcast. I'm your co-host, Ryan Stern. Join with me, as always, Derek Mountain, backsportspage.com. How's it going, Derek?
Great. A lot of news today, not much relating to football, but this is going to be Super Wild Card Weekend. Did not disappoint, and this weekend is going to be maybe even better.
Yeah, the divisional round is always my favorite round. You seem to get the highest quality games, and you get 4 of them. And I have a feeling, and we'll get into this, but I have a feeling one of these games can go down as an all-time great with the way both teams have been playing over the last month or two. But again, make sure you're following us on Twitter. I'm at rstern33. Derek is at Derek Mountain. Follow Backsports Page on all social media at Backsports Page. So we're going to get into a recap of the wild card round. We're going to look ahead to this weekend's divisional round. But we're going to spend a little bit of time on a couple new coaching vacancies that arose this week, including in your neck of the woods with the Philadelphia Eagles finally letting go of Doug Pederson.
Yeah, it wasn't a huge surprise to the Philly fandom just because of all the reports that were leaking the morning that he had been fired. Whenever that happens, it's always bad news. And the reports were pretty telling. So some of them involved kind of how controlling owner Jeffrey Lurie has been over certain draft picks, including Arcega-Whiteside over DK Metcalf, and Rager over Justin Jefferson this past year. Jalen Hurts picks some of those picks. And then the reason that Doug had gone fired was him and Lurie had met Monday. And the coaching changes that he was going to make weren't to Lurie's appeal. They were very minimal, actually. So Schwartz had already stepped down. He's not coaching next year, the defensive coordinator. He was just prepared to promote everyone. He was ready to move Press Taylor from quarterbacks coach to OC, Andrew Briner from quality control to quarterbacks coach, and Matt Burke from the D-line to D coordinator. And that did not appeal to Lurie. Doug he was very vocal about wanting more personnel control. He was never going to get that. Howie Roseman, the GM, is staying there. It's going to be his 4th coaching change in the last 8 years. So as an Eagles fan, I'm obviously not happy to that, but him and Lurie are tied to the hip. When you hear Lurie talk about him, he speaks really highly of Roseman. He doesn't appear to think that Roseman is a problem at all. I think that Howie Roseman is an extension of Lurie to some degree in the way that they think, the way that they draft, the moves that they've made. And they sided between Doug and Carson at the end of it. Doug did not want to move on with Carson. He wanted to have him traded or cut. And Lurie obviously did not want to make that work. He's a $130 million investment, and Doug isn't. So they decided to side with Carson and moving on from Doug.
All right, so there are 2 things that we now have to look at. We have to look at the future for Doug Pederson and where are the Eagles going to turn to for their next head coach, because they're already now a week behind where all of the other teams who are in search of a head coach are. They waited until the week after Black Monday to get rid of their coach. So now let's look at that first. So where do you think that the Eagles turn to? Do they try and find someone with a more veteran background, or are they going to go for one of these raw coordinators that have worked in the past in Philly?
So I think there are 2 directions they could go in. I think as an overview of the head coaching vacancies, I think it's the worst one or it's at the bottom. I mean, it's the second worst cap situation going to 2021. Not too much young, promising players that get you excited. And the QB situation is a nightmare. So it's going to get worse before it gets better. I still think the Eagles are going to be a 4 or 5 win team next year unless they nail the draft. I just don't really see it. So I don't think a guy like Arthur Smith, who they've requested to interview, he will have interviewed with every team. I think he would be crazy to come here if we were to offer him the job. We're interviewing Robert Saleh tomorrow in Florida. Like, why would he come here? He's interviewed with every team but Houston. Like, the same goes down, like Bieniemy, those guys. So I think they're either going to have a dart throw with one of these young guys, maybe a Joe Brady, one of those guys, Eberflus, someone to that extent. They had requested an interview to Gerard Mayo, the linebackers coach at the Patriots. I think that might be a gauge of a defensive coordinator job. Maybe it is a legitimate look. Or I think they'll go retread. So I think maybe a guy like Caldwell. I think maybe they're interviewing Todd Bowles after their playoff run with the Buccaneers. Maybe even Marvin Lewis, someone to that extent to maybe just build up the foundation again because it's at a pretty low point right now.
What are the talks about the other coaches that do remain on the staff? Do we think that they are going to be retained? Do we think that they're going to leave it up to the new coach about whether or not they're going to bring in their own entire new staff?
So that's the thing. I think Doug didn't have nearly as much control over his staff as we thought. So Jeffrey Lurie had pressed Jim Schwartz upon him to be the defensive coordinator. That was not Doug's pick. And I don't think it worked out fine. I don't think Jim Schwartz was really given that many resources, but I think the new coach that comes in here, they're gonna have Howie and Jeffrey Lurie over their shoulder with whoever they pick. I think that's why a guy like Gerard Mayo might have been interviewed, or one of these younger guys who will be controlled. Like it'll be a micromanaging situation where they're over their shoulder. The one guy who's intriguing, who I think will get a head coaching interview, is Deuce Staley, the running backs coach, associate head coach. He's been there for the last 7 years. He's been there 3 different head coaches. He played for the Eagles. Everybody loves him. Malcolm Jenkins is already speaking up for him. I think he's a great leader. A lot of people respect him. So I think they would be smart to have some continuity and bring him back if he weren't to be the head coach. That's the only guy that really sticks out to me, though.
And now we're going to look ahead to what is upcoming for Doug Pederson. And to me, there's one team that sticks out. And there were even rumors that this team would have even engaged in conversations with the Eagles about a possible trade, which absolutely blew my mind that someone would actually give up draft capital to bring in someone like Doug Pederson. And that's the New York Jets. The writing has been on the wall, and I think that the Jets, they were playing I think they played their hand perfectly. If Pederson was their guy all along, they went about their business and they waited until the Eagles made that decision. And they went and they started doing their head coaching interviews. But from what it sounds like, that he's the guy that they want to bring in.
Yeah, he's tied to the hip with Joe Douglas. Exactly. Yep. I think that could be an interesting fit. I only see him going there, or he's going to take a year off.
Yeah.
Exactly. He's going to do the Mike McCarthy, Jim Caldwell thing, where sometimes those guys age better. He will always be a Super Bowl winning head coach. He's always going to have that in his resume, tip of the cap. He's an Andy Reid. He's under the Andy Reid coaching tree, which is as rich as it gets. And he might want to take the year off. He might want to be in a consultant role with one of his buddies, but I only see him going to New York. I thought about maybe LA, but I don't really see them enticing Pederson. They have no connection there with Telesco. So I only see the Jets, or he takes a year off and he comes back in 2022 and gets a head coaching job.
All right. So, and before we get into the recapping of the wild card round, there were 2 prominent coordinator jobs that opened up this week as well. And that's with Brian Schottenheimer, the offensive coordinator out in Seattle, and Chuck. They decided to part ways. We all know what that means. just like the Giants and Tom Coughlin parted ways a couple years back. And then Chuck Pagano, the defensive coordinator in Chicago, retiring. So you have the offensive coordinator for Russell Wilson and the Chicago Bears defensive coordinator. Two real prominent positions are opening up.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued by the Seattle vacancy because they had such a weird year. For the first 7 weeks, it was let Russ cook. He's the clear MVP. He's going to do it this year. He's going to get votes. He's going to be right there in the end of it. And it completely fell apart. And the perfect encapsulation was the wild card game against LA. They could do nothing. That was as bad a game as I've ever seen Russell Wilson play. And you heard Pete Carroll talk about the role of what their offense is going to play next year. And he said, we got to run the ball more and we got to be better at running the ball. And I look at that Rams game, and that definitely was not the takeaway that I had for their offense. But Pete Carroll stays living in the 1990s in regards to offense.
And it's funny because the thing that was worrying Pete Carroll the most was the fact that Russell Wilson was turning the ball over. For some reason, he couldn't actually see that his quarterback was putting up over 400 yards and 30-plus points every week, and they were winning. But
6-1.
Right. And
one
so
seed.
This has to go on Pete Carroll because it was Pete Carroll that went to Schottenheimer and said, we need to adjust the game plan so that we're not turning the ball over as much. And I mean, I get it. At the time, their defense was not playing well. The defense really turned around when they acquired Carlos Dunlap. He was a shot in the arm for that entire group. They played really well second half of the season. I don't know if that was a coincidence or that it fell in line with the new offensive game plan, maybe a little bit of both. Mm-hmm. Because with Seattle trying to play a little bit more ball control, time management, the defense wasn't on the field as much as they were when they were just going up and down the field at will. But part of the reason why they were not as successful down the stretch was because it was a completely different game plan, and one that I really don't think I really think it maybe it upset, it hurt, it did something to Russell Wilson because now he has this mindset that they don't trust him to make the plays when it counts.
Yeah, they just didn't have an identity down the stretch. So
Right.
They would force running the ball in early downs, and they weren't good at it. And their idea of throwing the ball was they were only deep shots. That's all it was. And they had a lot of success early in the year, but they weren't optimal. They didn't set it up properly, especially against the Rams, who are strictly two shell. They're 2 deep or 4 deep most of the game. And Russell Wilson just has never had a propensity to check it down. He's always struggled with quick game concepts. He's going to run around and hold the ball too long, and that's why he gets sacked so much. But a guy like like the offensive coordinator next year, you have to work around that because he's never been good at that. And he's, 32 going into next year, 31, 32. It's not going to change, and it's nothing wrong with that. Russell Wilson's still a great quarterback. You can window dress it with RPOs and other stuff like that, but and screens with their receivers. But they just didn't have a structure to their offense. Once the Rams took away the deep ball, it looked awful.
And we saw in the first half of the season, DK Metcalf was one of the top 2 or 3 wide receivers in the entire league. He was getting all this buzz about he's the next coming of the great wide receiver. He's got the size speed combination, and he only ends up with 83 catches. Now I know he's not the prototypical big he's not going to be the big time receptions guy, but he was on pace to put up well north of where he had finished. And somehow Tyler Lockett finishes with 100 receptions. It felt like he had 4 good games all year.
Yeah. And they were all in the first 7 weeks.
Oh, and week 17 he had an enormous week. But he had to have had I want to look it up, at least 50% of his catches in those 4 games.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and he would just, I don't know if that's an indictment on Schottenheimer or Wilson, but like a guy like Lockett, why isn't he getting the ball 68 times every single game? That's a guy who he has clear chemistry with Russell Wilson. There are easy ways to get wide receivers the football now. And there were weeks where he disappeared. DK Metcalf was taken out of certain games against some of the top corners. And every single game he played Jalen Ramsey, he was taken out of the game. And you look at the box score this week, he finishes with a touchdown, 80 yards, and it's fool's gold. I mean, the long touchdown he did have was a broken play. The Rams played it perfectly to start. It was scramble drill, and Russell Wilson and DK Metcalf made a great play. But through the course of the game, he didn't have an impact.
I mean, was it over the final 9 games of the season? He eclipsed 6 receptions only twice.
Yeah.
This is somebody who, and we saw last year, the chemistry is there. We know it's there. It was just over the second half of the season, the play calling just went away. And now you also got to look at the Chicago Bears with Chuck Pagano retiring. And I give him a hell of a lot of credit because, yes, it's easy to look good when you have a Khalil Mack, when you have a Roquan Smith, when you have a Denny Trevathan, Akeem Hicks. That team, that unit battled injuries the entire season. They never had everybody on the field at full strength at any point of the season. And they were still one of the top defensive units in the league. And this is traditionally one of those you think of the Chicago Bears, you think of the monsters of the Midway, and you think of the 85 Bears being one of, if not the greatest defensive team of all time. This is going to be a very different looking ball club next year. They're in cap hell. They have a ton of free agents, and they have a quarterback issue that they're going to have to deal with. Are they going to try and bring back a Trubisky? I don't see Allen Robinson coming back whatsoever. He's going to look for a more stable situation. It's going to be one of the first times that he's really going to go and now look for himself as opposed to look for the most amount of money.
Yeah, I mean,
and he's going to get the money because he is the top wide receiver.
It's him and Galladay, exactly.
And Galladay is coming off a season where he played 3.5 games. So he's going to get the most money that a wide receiver is going to get this offseason.
Definitely. Bringing up Pagano on that defense in 2018, that might have been the best defense in football. They were 12-4, and Trubisky, he was making progress going into his second year. He still hadn't established himself as the guy, but they were winning games. They take a step back 2019. This year they go 8-8, and they make the playoffs because of the format, but they're not a playoff team. I mean, looking at the construction of this team, it's a 6-9 win team based on how close games fall, but they're really not close. But they've managed the team that way, and they're bringing back GM Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy. But the moves that they have made, I'll look at last year. Khalil Mack 2 years ago, that's obviously a win now move. I think for the most part, it's worked out well till this year. But going into this year, they signed Robert Quinn to a 5-year deal with over $30 million guaranteed. They signed Jimmy Graham to $16 million. It's an irresponsible use of your resources. And yeah, they have a ton of injuries, but they have no depth, and that's why, because of these signings. It's just and they're actually drafting well. This year they drafted well. Jalen Johnson's a nice player. Darnell Mooney's a nice player. Cole Kmet's going to be a really good tight end. They're not drafting poorly, but as you said, the quarterback issue is not going away. Foles has to be on the team next year. Trubisky's a free agent. You can't roll into the season with Nick Foles as your only quarterback. Al Robinson's gone. This O-line's still a mess. The defense, they probably missed their window. It's still a good defense, but from 2018, I mean, Akeem Hicks gets hurt every year. Clomax, not the same player. Robert Quinn's on the wrong side of 30. Eddie Jackson was toasted in that same game. He really struggled. It's still going to be a top 10 defense, but I think that's kind of the disadvantage of building around defense in 2020 is your window for opportunity is just not nearly as long as a ripe offense like the Chiefs. It's just, if you got the stable quarterback, the play caller in place, you could be reaping the rewards for up to 10 years. On defense, you have a much smaller window.
All right, so let's change gears and look. We're gonna do a quick little recap of what we saw this past weekend, Wild Card Weekend, and it started out with a game that truly didn't disappoint. The only thing, I mean, there was 51 total points that were scored, and that upset me because I thought there were going to be even more points. The Bills come away with a 27-24 victory, their first playoff win in 25 years. Phillip Rivers and the Colts gave it everything they got. It was one of the more exciting fourth quarters that a playoff game can give you.
Yeah, that is on the downside. You get the Bears, but on the upside of the Super Wild Card Weekend, you get the Colts, who they should be in the playoffs. It's an 11-5 team. They're a very good football team. Down the stretch, they're playing really good football. Frank Reich's a great coach. I think he made some questionable decisions in this game, but at least he was more aggressive than some of these other coaches that we'll get into. I appreciate him at least leaving it out on the field. I think Phillip Rivers played an awesome game for how limited he is at this point in his career. Pittman was great. I think Jonathan Taylor, he's going to be awesome. He's going to be great, but he struggled in that game. 2 drops. He had one all year, 2 drops that game, and just a lot of one-on-one tackles that you expect him to break where he's meeting Poyer on the line or Micah Hyde in the second level. And it's a 5-yard gain. It's a good play, but man, John, you gotta break those tackles if you want to beat the Buffalo Bills. They did their best in limiting Josh Allen. Holding them to 27 points it's a tough feat. I think if you hold them under 30, you like your odds. So they gave him everything they had. It was a great game.
It's funny because the entire game it felt like Josh Allen was struggling. And he still put up 324 and 2 and rushed for another touchdown. That's how good. That's how good this guy has been all season long. Where you can truly think that he's struggling, and he was still the best quarterback. Tom Brady. But he was. He was actually more efficient than Brady. Brady was just over 50%. Completion percentage.
Just all of them were chunk plays, literally for like 400 yards or like 390.
But this is going to be the best defense that Josh Allen's going to have to face on his road to the Super Bowl. I know the Ravens are playing much better on the defensive side of the ball, but they're still not as deep a unit, I think, as the Colts. So this could have been the best defense they're going to see. But this weekend should be fun. You had brought up one good point with Jonathan Taylor. I think Jonathan Taylor is going to be a superstar in this league. But the two things that a lot of people were worried about Jonathan Taylor coming into his NFL career were fumbles and drop passes out of the backfield. And I know his fumble numbers definitely went down this year. But again, those important key possessions.
He caught the ball great in the regular season. I mean, he had one drop on, because I looked it up as I was watching the game. I was like, I'm pretty sure he's caught the ball really well. He's caught, I think, 36 passes and 39 targets, which is insane. And he dropped one pass. Like, that's as good as it gets for a guy who everyone questioned the pre-draft process, how he'll catch the ball out of the backfield. And I mean, he had 2 costly drops in that game.
All right, the next game that we saw on the weekend was it was a weird game. It never felt like anybody was ever in line with what their game plan was going to be coming into the game. The Rams end up taking down the Seahawks 30-20, and that was a last-minute touchdown by Seattle, or otherwise it's the score is much different. But the Rams lose John Wolford early on a scary helmet-to-helmet hit, and Jared Goff has to come in 12 days after having 3 pins inserted into his broken thumb. And you could tell that the thumb was affecting him all game long. It looked better as the game went along, but those first 2 quarters that he played were rough to watch.
Yeah, he started like 4 for 13 for 98 yards, and the one was that 45-yarder to Kupp. That was just a fluke. It was a horrible pass, but Jamal Adams was covering him, so he got it. And that was the one thing I'll say about McVay, is it was not a great offensive game from the Rams, but they had a clear plan, and it was to go at Jamal Adams in coverage.
I think one of the stats that I had seen on the first, I think it was either 91 or 81 or receiving yards or passing yards that the Rams had. 80 of them were Jamal Adams was the closest defender to the ball.
In their first 12 passes, 8 were targeted at Jamal Adams. So, that goes to just tell you exactly what the Rams had in line for their game plan, and it got them some points early, and their defense buckled in, and they did what they've done the entire year. They carried this team, and Darius Williams came up with a huge pick six. That was all anticipation, all film study. And he's played great this year. I mean, Jalen Ramsey did what he's always done. He took DK Metcalf out of the game. Aaron Donald was, we don't need to get into Aaron Donald. He was as disruptive as it gets. His health is going to be a big, because he did leave the game with rib injury. But Jalen Ramsey, and the one big play that DK Metcalf had was on a play that Ramsey wasn't covering him, and then it was a broken coverage where Russell escaped the pocket, looked like he was going to run, and Metcalf was just able to get in behind the defense. That wasn't even on Ramsey. So, but when Ramsey was on Metcalf, it was shutdown city. He, in my mind, should have should be in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year. I think he's definitely the game's best corner right now. A guy like Xavier Howard has the numbers, and he's ridiculous in terms of his ball skills. But Jalen Ramsey, they don't throw at him. They don't throw at him. They'll put him in the star position in the nickel, and he inserts in the run game. He's a great tackler. Like, he does everything. And I think that game was a perfect encapsulation of how those trades can work. So Ramsey was traded for 2 first-round picks. They paid up. He's the highest-paid corner in football, but they're reaping all the rewards right now. Him and Donald are an absolute force, and Brandon Staley has everything working like a well-oiled machine on that defense, where you look to Seattle with Jamal Adams. That's going to that's going to – I mean, I think they already are having their regrets, but I think this year he definitely had his shortcomings and his struggles, but it's not going to age well. It's not a position of premium like a cornerback in today's game. You don't need a box safety in 2020 that's going to make a huge impact. When he's asked to cover, they'll just throw at him like the Rams did. And they have Jared Goff. When they go up against better quarterbacks, it's even more glorified. So I think the Seahawks they're really going to be on the wrong side of history in that trade. And we saw it on Saturday in that game.
And to wrap up Saturday night, we had Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers heading up to Washington. And sure, yeah, we know what the final score. I mean, it was an 8-point game. Washington did score late to make it closer, but what I came away with this is that Tyler Heinecke played his rear end off.
So is Heinecke going to be in consideration as their quarterback next year? Because he should be.
I think so. Because of where they are in the draft. And where how much it's going to cost to get up into a spot that you can get one of those 4 quarterbacks. And I'm not sure even if all 4 of those quarterbacks are going to be ready to play next year. I definitely don't think Trey Lance is going to be ready to play after only having one showcase game that he was able to play in this year. I think he's more of a developmental prospect, but I think he can be really good, but I don't see him being ready to take over an NFL team next year. The only name to me that would make sense would be Mac Jones, because I'm not expecting the most out of him in terms of upside and future. But I think he might be the most ready, again, outside of Trevor Lawrence, to take over an NFL team, coming from the Alabama system, the Alabama coaching staff. He was really well coached, and looks like he knows how to handle an offense. He's not blessed with the greatest physical tools. He was blessed with having one of the best groups of football players put around him. I mean, and watching Devonta Smith and what he was able to do, especially in the first half of the national championship game the other night, was just really something special to watch. But Mac Jones maybe makes sense for them, but even if they draft the Mac Jones, he's not going to be guaranteed the starting job. I don't know what the free agency is going to look like. What are the Cowboys going to do with Dak Prescott? I think Prescott would be the only quarterback that would make sense. That would be able to come in from free agency and take over. Maybe a Jameis Winston, but it sounds like the Saints are doing their best to try and keep him in-house. Tyler Heinecke, I think, is going to be in the discussion for Washington's starting quarterback next year.
Definitely. I think Mac Jones is a very interesting guy, because when I watch him, he reminds me of young Alex Smith, the way he plays quarterback. Absolutely. He's a game manager. I don't think he's nearly as athletic. He's not a great runner, but the way he throws the football, he reminds me a little bit of Alex Smith. So if that's something that Scott Turner wants in his offense, I mean, they literally have Alex Smith there. Yeah. I think that's good competition between him and Heinecke, 2 different quarterbacks, depending on what they want. Some free agents that could be intriguing just looking at Spot Track is there's Jacoby Brissett in Indy. If he's looking for maybe a competition, I think Trubisky's another one who maybe they give him 1 year and prove it. Even Fitzpatrick, if they don't like where they are in the draft, they bring on Fitzpatrick for a year and they compete and they see how far they can get. And I
think what Washington is one of the 7 teams he hasn't played for.
Oh my God! If he was in the NFC East, that's like the one thing that
Oh
the
my
NFC East
goodness.
might be missing.
Yeah. He hasn't been with any NFC East team.
No.
Would,
So
would, would that check off every division? Or no NFC North?
no. NFC West, he played with the Rams.
Yes.
NFC South, he played with Tampa.
Yeah.
AFC South, he played with Houston. AFC East, he played for everyone except New England. AFC North, he played for someone. He played for Baltimore. No. He played for Cleveland.
He might have. I don't.
Oh wait, he definitely played for Cincinnati. Now he definitely played for Cincinnati.
Oh yes, I think
with,
he was
with like To, right?
That was his first team, I think, or
T.O.?
no, Buffalo, or it was Buffalo his first team.
So he played for.
Yeah, he definitely played
for
T.O.
the team after the Rams.
Yeah.
And he hasn't played on an AFC West team. Okay, so
he hasn't played. So the NFC Northeast and AFC West.
So
he's got to make that happen. He's got to make that happen.
That actually, there's no way anyone's done that. He needs to do that. He needs to do that.
Oh Lord. But yeah, Tom Brady's pretty good at football.
Oh my God! And Godwin had like the worst game of his life, and he still threw for 390. Yeah,
four drop passes. Who was I listening to? Oh, I was listening to the Locked On NFL Draft show, and Trevor Sikkema has spent a lot of time covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he was saying that when Chris Godwin drops one pass, you scratch your head and wonder what's going on. And then he drops four.
Yeah. You can see it was clearly in his head.
And for him to drop four, I mean, yeah. I mean, Brady ended up with 381 and 2. It could have easily been 450 and 4.
It's scary. I mean,
yeah.
What they did too was brilliant. I mean, they utilized play action a lot more, but they kept Gronkin. I don't think Gronk had a catch, right? But he's as good at blocking tight end as it gets. They put him one-on-one with Chase Young, and he's winning those matchups. I mean, he's that good. And then they're putting out Cam Brate to catch those tight end routes, sail routes, in-breaking routes. And he's just as good as Gronk at that stuff at this point in his career.
Yeah, Gronk had one target with no catches.
And then we get started with the receivers, and it's Evans, it's Godwin, AB's got another touchdown. What is that? 5 in his last 4 games.
And how about Mike Evans? Mike Evans has a really bad hyperextended knee in week 17, and then his status is up in the air for the entire week. It wasn't even a known fact that he was going to dress in this game. And he goes out and puts up 6 catches for 119 yards against the Washington defense.
And they're no slouch at all. That's a great defense.
And I know that there were a lot of naysayers about Mike Evans, especially earlier on in the season, where the number of catches was down, the number of yards was down. Yeah, the touchdowns were still there, but it looked like him and Brady were just not on the same page. But they have definitely gone on the same page over the last month, because Mike Evans has been absolutely tearing it apart. So
looks great.
Yeah. All right. So then we go into Sunday's games, and I mean, what a crazy game this was, because at the end of the first quarter, you're like, oh my God, the Titans are going to run away with this thing, because they were looking the way their offense was moving the ball. You were thinking they were going to get at least 3 on every single drive because of just the efficiency that they were able to have, especially on play action. Derrick Henry ended up not being able. He only had 40-something yards, but the play action was what was setting everything up for the Tennessee offense. AJ Brown was doing everything he could do, and it looked like the Titans were on their way to running away with this game. And then everything switched in the second quarter.
Yeah, absolutely. That was my exact thought in the first quarter. Is like, man, the Ravens just, I guess they just can't beat Tennessee. They're kryptonite, and they just can't figure them out. And it looked like they were going to boat race them up 10-0. And Derrick Henry hadn't even been going at that point. And I'm like, all right, well, when the third and fourth quarter comes around, we know how this story ends. So if they're scoring now, it's only going to get worse. And they only got better as the game went along. And I think the biggest thing was just neutralizing Henry. Once you do that, you take everything away from their offense, just as you said. They're so reliant on the play action and boot stuff. What the biggest takeaway for me was how dominant their D-line was, but how well they set the edge with Pernell McPhee and Matthew Judon. Derrick Henry's a bruiser in between the tackles. He's going to fall if he is untouched going into the line of scrimmage. He's going to fall forward for 3 or 4, and that's a weapon in itself. But the biggest runs he has is on outside zone by far. I mean, once he gets his big strides going, full head of steam, D-backs aren't tackling him. And with the way Baltimore set the edge, it completely took Derrick Henry out of the game. It was really fun to watch.
And Lamar Jackson had one of those runs that you say, man, if this guy could ever really settle into becoming a passer, what is the ceiling for this kid? Because I mean, he's special running the ball. And that 40-something yard touchdown run, I know Harbaugh had called it the greatest run he ever saw by a quarterback.
I don't think that's.
I can think of 2 or 3.
I think like Kaepernick's.
I can think of 2 or 3. Yep.
But like, I mean,
Lamar
Jackson,
the Kaepernick. The Kaepernick against Green Bay, I think the overtime was it again Minnesota? I believe it was. Where he Michael Vick when he was with Atlanta, the overtime winner.
Yeah, I think that was Minnesota.
And the Lamar Jackson spinorama run from last year. I can put those 3 ahead, but when you put it in terms of the importance of the game, maybe only the Kaepernick run. But that was a special play.
I mean, he is the best athlete on the field every single game, and he plays quarterback. And Daniel Jeremiah had the perfect analogy for it. It's like watching an SEC player play against the Sun Belt in the early part of the year. They're just way faster, way more athletic, way twitchier, and that's what it looks like. He completely negated Byard's angle tackling him in like 2 steps. Like Byard had a 2-way go of him, and Lamar closed that space and ran by him just like that. And is like, I don't know if another player, let alone quarterback, I don't know if another player can do that. Like it's his acceleration. Like, I don't know if his speed is anything we haven't seen. He's a 4.3 guy, but we see it with, I think, Cam Newton in the early part of his career when he got going. Like there are quarterbacks out there, Randall Cunningham, and especially Vic. But his acceleration takes like 3 or 4 steps to get the top speed. I've never seen that. I mean, he's special.
Play speed is much different than running a 40-yard dash in Under Armour speed. We all know that he was. Did he run the fastest?
He didn't run the 40 because there was all the talk of him going to receiver.
That's right.
And he was like, "I'm not running a 40. I'm a quarterback."
Yeah. He ran at his pro day, right?
No.
Oh,
he refused to run a 40.
Okay, so. But obviously, there aren't many quarterbacks who have had his type of speed. But you're not going to lump him into the Henry Ruggs, the Chris Johnson. There are defensive backs who probably ran faster 40-yard dashes than Lamar Jackson would run, but his play speed is just on a different level than everybody else's.
Definitely.
All right, then we had the
Slime
Bears
game.
Saints.
Slime cannons.
So I didn't watch the Nickelodeon feed.
I watched it for like one drive, and I hated it.
I probably should have, especially when I heard, and it was funny because I was talking with my wife after the game, and she asked if I was watching the Nickelodeon feed. I said I hadn't, and she was telling me about things that she was reading on social media. And she said, "Yeah, the MVP of the game, Mitchell Trubisky." And I'm like, "No, that's a typo. Mitchell Trubisky was not the MVP of the game." But then I heard that it was from, I guess it was Big Cat that was trying to get his social media followers into voting Trubisky as the MVP of this game so he could get slimed.
That might have been the meanest thing I've ever seen happen to a professional athlete. And I mean, Trubisky, yeah, second pick. He gets paid a lot of money, and he's been pretty just pedestrian. So I don't feel that bad for him, but like to introduce kids to the Chicago Bears and that as the idea of football and how offense should work in 2020 is not. That's what is the NFL thinking? Or
at least they got to watch New Orleans.
Yeah, I mean, and they put on a clinic defensively, but like, wow, what a awful game that was. That was so boring.
Yeah,
I'm done with the Bears. I'm done with them. And they're running it back with Nagy and Pace. It's crazy.
The sooner that we can get Mitchell Trubisky as a non-starter in this league, the better. But New Orleans may, like you said, they put on an absolute defensive clinic. But that game turned on one play.
Yeah.
The Javon Mims drop touchdown pass, because he catches that. It's a tie game going into the half, and that wasn't a drop. That was the drop. I mean, we like to rag on Trubisky, but that was as perfectly placed a pass that a quarterback can put one, and right in the end. And oh my goodness, there was one screenshot of it where he's still looking up at the ball, and the ball's already in his midsection.
Okay, so
no idea.
I will give you I won't do it. I want to see you guess it. I won't like tip my cap either way. So that would have been a completion of over 30 air yards for Trubisky. How many other 30-plus air yard completions has Mitchell Trubisky had this year?
Less than 5.
Okay. Want to put a number on it?
I'll put 2.
One, and it was week 17. 1. That would have been his second.
Oh, my goodness.
And you watch his Next Gen Stats gives the passing charts of each quarterback each week. All his completions are under 10 yards. Really, all of them are under 5. I mean, it's unbelievable.
He's less accurate Chad Pennington.
I forget who said that. Someone was like, he's Chad Pennington post shoulder surgery. Like comeback player of the year, Chad Pennington. I was like, yeah, but he's worse. Like, I mean, and I think Trubisky's like he's a backup.
He's Miami Dolphins, Chad Pennington.
Yeah, like he's
not New York Jets.
Yeah, he's the worst Teddy Bridgewater. Like he should be a backup. He'd be one of the better backups, but like. Exactly what you said. Like, please don't have him be a starting quarterback in this league next year. It's just, I mean, we know what he is at this point.
And then to wrap up Wild Card Weekend, this was the definition of wild.
I've never seen that before. And either as NFL history, no one's been down 28-0 in the first quarter of NFL playoff history.
nothing. And it wasn't even like the Browns really. I mean, it was 14-0 because of bad offense by the Steelers and incompetence by the Steelers offense. Yeah, the bad snap and then two people miss it. It ends up in the end zone. The Browns fall on it. And then one of Roethlisberger's 82 interceptions leads to, was it back-to-back touchdowns for Kareem Hunt. I was eating dinner at the time. I wasn't watching the first quarter. I turned the game on, and I said that no, that this can't be. Because it was 21-0 when I turned the game on.
It was that. I mean, it was a culmination of just all the Steelers' shortcomings in the first quarter. But the biggest concern going in this game was how limited the Browns were, and the biggest one was Stefanski. They didn't have Petonio, but they got over that. Mike Dunn played great in relief, but everyone's talking about Stefanski. He's the play caller. He's the head coach. He's the reason they're 11-5. Blah blah blah, and rightfully so. He's probably gonna be the coach of the year. And you go, you know what? He's gonna be in his basement, but the saving grace is he has his first 15. He's gonna script his first 15. And the Browns offense will get going. It'll be fine. And it's 28-0, and they hadn't even gone through the scripted plays yet. You're like, what is going? Like, they haven't even gotten into their offense yet. Like, this is insane. And they're just complete incompetence from Mike Tomlin and Ben Roethlisberger. And look, I love Mike Tomlin, but he's had 3 playoff wins in the past 8 or 9 years. I saw. I mean, consistently unprepared against his opponents in the playoffs, and it couldn't have been more glorified in that Browns game. It was just a horrible game plan from their offense.
Yeah, I know both of us were on Pittsburgh to win, but not to cover. Yeah. So I think both of us knew it was going to be.
I felt like it could have been an upset, but I was worried about Stefanski. Yeah,
right. That Cleveland was going to be in the game, but I don't think either one of us was ready to commit to Cleveland winning without Stefanski.
Yeah.
It wasn't Stefanski was not the issue. The Steelers were the issue with that game.
They're like the Bears to me in a greater degree, where they're a little better, but they need to start over. I mean, it's not going to work. Then they can't run it back and expect it to work next year.
Oh no. No,
Ben's done. He's gonna come back and play because he has a $41 million cap hit. He's gonna come back and play, but he's not gonna hold up next year. They have to figure out another solution at quarterback. It's not Mason Rudolph. And we talked about Darnold. Is it maybe Mac Jones in the end of the first round? I don't know. Is it one of these guys that they take a flyer on in free agency? I don't know, but it's definitely not Ben Roethlisberger next year.
Nope, definitely not. And for how many weeks have we been saying that Pittsburgh isn't the team their record says they are?
Exactly.
All right, so let's look ahead to this weekend. And again, this is my favorite weekend of NFL football. And so we open up at 4:30 on Saturday. We got the Rams heading up to Green Bay. And if you look at the NFC playoffs, the 2 best units of the 4 teams are the Green Bay Packers offense and the Los Angeles Rams defense, and we get to see that matchup. This should be really fun. I cannot wait for Devontae Adams versus Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah, I mean, you can make an argument that they're the 2 best units in the whole league, best offense versus best defense in the entire NFL. I can't wait either. The Rams are clicking on all cylinders. We saw last week, and the Packers are just scoring at will. They've scored in over 30 points in double-digit games this year. The Jalen Ramsey deployment is going to be really interesting because they moved Devontae outside in the slot, motion him a ton. The Rams play a lot of zone coverage, but they love to shadow with Jalen Ramsey when he goes up against superstars. They love to put him in the nickel spot, in that star linebacker spot, and have him get involved in the run game and have him kind of just run around and rob and almost spy. You can't, I don't know, like they're going to have to kind of mix it up and be a little more multiple because obviously they want him on Devontae Adams, but Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers are you can't completely take him out of the game. They're just way too good. So that's going to be a great chess match to watch. I can't wait for that. And I mean, the biggest question mark, Jared Goff in Lambeau Field with that broken thumb. If he can put up 27 points, 24 points, they have a shot. I don't know if that's going to be enough, but they have a shot. But that's what Goff has to do this weekend if they want to win.
Yeah, I mean, right now the over/under is set at 45.5. So, and it's by far the lowest total of the weekend. I think a lot of people are expecting this to be one of those first to 24. Has a really good shot at winning. And to be honest, if there is a way that the Rams are going to win, it's going to be because of Cam Akers. Cam Akers was spectacular against the Seattle Seahawks this past weekend. He was the reason that they were able to stay afloat offensively because it just wasn't there for the first 2.5, 3 quarters through the air. And we know that the Green Bay Packers rush defense has been very suspect this year, to say it nicely. Cam Akers against the Packers defense is going to be where they're going to need to exploit.
Absolutely. I can't wait.
All right, so let's make our picks. The Packers are 6.5 point favorites, and like I said, the total is set at 45.5.
I'll go with the over there. I mean, the Rams put up 30 last week, partially because of that defensive touchdown from Darius Williams, but they're getting a lot out of Cam Akers. I think that's a decent mismatch they can exploit. I do like him to find the end zone once or twice. I still like having Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods against the Green Bay secondary. So I do expect a pretty good game. I actually will pick the Rams to cover, but I still think the Packers are going to win. I think it's a really tough task to go into Lambeau and win, especially with Jared Goff with a broken thumb. I'm going to expect like a 27-21, 27-24 kind of game. I'll go over, Rams to cover, Packers to win.
So I'm actually going to take the Packers to cover. Jared Goff on the road in frigid temperatures scares the daylights out of me. If I'm Green Bay, I'm making Jared Goff beat me. I'm stacking the box. I'm not letting Cam Akers come out and take charge of this game. And so I'm going to go with Green Bay. And I will take the over as well. I do think that there are going to be points that are going to be scored. I don't think that Aaron Donald is going to be 100% even if he does play in the game. I can see Aaron Jones having a bigger game this weekend because I do think that without Aaron Donald, it's a completely different defense.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to take Green Bay to cover and the over as well. Then Saturday night, this may end up going down. Like I said, this was the game I was alluding to. That if there's going to be one that goes down as an all-time great, this is going to be it. We got the Buffalo Bills hosting the Baltimore Ravens. The Bills are 2.5 point favorites. The total is set at 50. And it looks like there's going to be some snow. And Lamar Jackson has never played in the snow in his career. And apparently he's not very happy about the first time him doing so in the playoffs. Is the snow the great Lamar neutralizer?
I'm not buying into that. I actually think it helps them, if anything. They're more ground oriented than Buffalo. I know, I don't think it's going to hurt Buffalo's passing attack. They're so used to it, and they've proved it in the second half of the year. But I think I saw the forecast had about a 50% chance of snowing. It's snow showers,
Yeah.
if that. So I'm not going to read that much into it. I think it was a little overblown, and he probably played a little bit into it. And it should help them. I mean, they're a run first offense, and you watch Baltimore. You had talked about it. Lamar's still not the most polished drop back passer in the league. That interception in the first half was just awful.
Oh,
If I'm Greg
my
Roman,
God, that was one of the worst passes I've ever seen.
It was a punt. The way that it was Malcolm Butler. I mean, the way he fielded it was literally a punt. He was just waiting for it. It was terrible. He underthrew him by 10 yards at least.
Did you see that was the first Malcolm Butler postseason interception since Super Bowl 49?
Oh, oh man. Yeah, so this game's really interesting because it's going to be a clash of the styles on both sides of the football.
Yeah.
Buffalo is a pass-oriented offense. Baltimore gets after the quarterback really well. They blitz a ton. They blitz their top 3 blitz team in the league, and they play more man coverage than anyone. Play man coverage against Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis, John Brown, even Dawson Knox. That's going to be a really tall order. And then you flip the other side of the football. Baltimore runs the ball better than anyone right now, and Buffalo does not stop the run very well. If there's one huge weakness that they can exploit, it's definitely their rushing defense. Going back to the Arizona game, which is maybe the most comparable to Baltimore's offense against their read option with Kyler Murray, they gave up over 200 rushing yards. And Baltimore's rushing offense is a lot more potent than Arizona's. So I think there's going to be a ton of points in this game.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people are going to be scared off with the weather, thinking that it can damper some of the point scoring. But sometimes you actually see a lot more points in the snow games because a bad traction greatly favors the offense because the offense knows where they're going.
Coaches say that a lot too. Yeah. It's offense knows where they're going, defense doesn't. And when you have that split-second decision and not having that traction, as you talked about, defenders are falling down a lot. They're slipping a lot, and they're not as sure of themselves. When offensive guys, they have a head of steam going, they know where they're going. It's a huge advantage.
All right, so and again, we haven't even talked about Stephon Diggs, who may end up being the best player on the field at times. The connection, you very rarely see an off-season acquisition at wide receiver come in and have so much success in that first year, especially with a quarterback who had completed just barely over 60% of his passes last season. And don't think that Stephon Diggs wasn't the part of the reason, if not the main reason, why he was close to 70% this year. So, all right. So yeah, all right. So it's 2.5, and the total set at 50.
I'll go over, and I'm going to take Baltimore outright. I really like the way they're playing. I think Lamar got the monkey off his back, winning his first playoff game. I think that was a huge narrative that kind of daunted over their team. Now they could play loose. They could play free. They're the underdogs here, and I love their talent level. They've always been a Super Bowl contending team going into the year. They went under the radar when they were at 6-5. They were down and out. They're playing their best football right now. I like them to go into Buffalo and win.
So this was when I had filled out my bracket. I did have Pittsburgh winning, so I didn't have this game in the divisional round. but I actually had Baltimore going into Kansas City and knocking off Kansas City, and this was my my AFC Championship game. My God, these are two teams who are playing. Maybe the aside from
Yeah.
the Packers, the two best brands of football right now. I'm just there's something about the Buffalo Bills, and with it being in Buffalo, I know it's only going to be what between 6,000 and 7,000 fans, but between 6,000 and 7,000 Buffalo Bills fans is the equivalent to about 20,000 fans in most stadiums. Those fans are absolutely wild. The year that Michael Strahan got inducted into the Hall of Fame, me and my buddy went out to the Hall of Fame. We did the whole NFL experience thing. So we did there were parties and enshrinement and the Hall of Fame game. And so the other headline was Andre Reed. So the Hall of Fame game was the Giants and Bills. And I got to tell you, hanging around Bills fans for a weekend is a ride and a half.
They deserve this. Oh man,
they are a wild bunch. So I picked the Buffalo Bills as my team to win the Super Bowl. So I can't go against them here. So I'm going to take them to win and cover the 2.5, and I'll also go over. All right. We have at 3:00 on Sunday, the Cleveland Browns going into Kansas City, and something in my gut tells me the Kansas City Chiefs aren't going to be turning the ball over the way that Pittsburgh did last weekend.
Oh man, the spread's at 10 though, right?
Yep. Yeah, the spread's at 10, and the total is at 57 points.
All right. Well, I love Cleveland to cover there. That's a huge number in the divisional round. That's probably my favorite play against the spread this week.
Yep.
Kansas City hasn't covered the last 6 games, and they've won all of them. I mean, they've just been coasting. I know it's the playoffs now, but it's kind of tough to just flip the switch in the playoffs like that. They're way better than Cleveland, and I like them to win, but this is going to be a good game. I mean, Cleveland is going to be able to score points. It's going to be tough without Conklin. He's going to be out at right tackle. They're going to get Petonio back, I'm pretty sure. They're going to get Stefanski back, so those are 2 big upgrades for them. They've been getting some splash plays on defense. Obviously, against Pittsburgh, they turned the ball over a lot. They could get 1 or 2 of those from Kansas City. I mean, I'm not going to say they can escape with a win, but I mean, we've seen crazier things happen in the NFL. The way they can run the football, it's possible. I don't think it's going to happen here, but I love them to cover here.
Yeah, there's something that just seems off about Kansas City.
Yeah,
and how many times have we seen a team rest their starters in week 17, then have a bye in the wild card round, and just come out flat and rusty in the divisional round? We saw multiple times with Peyton Manning and the Colts. How many times they didn't get past the divisional round? It just happens way too often that it would bother me, especially with the way that Kansas City was playing at the end of the year. You said it, that they didn't cover their last 6 games. And a lot of people say, okay, well, they were what, 10, 13 point favorites. And yeah, they were double digit point favorites in a lot of these games, but they didn't win a game by more than 6 points at the last 6 weeks of the season. And they were 5-1. Obviously, they ended up losing week 17 where they rested everybody. But I mean, this is a team that we just expect to roll through the rest of the NFL competition, and it's something that we just didn't see.
Yeah, like the certain games that stick out. So they lost to Vegas the first time. They squeaked by him the second time. Carolina, Miami, Atlanta. I mean, Atlanta, they needed Koo to miss a 37-yarder at the end of the game to not go to overtime. It's just head scratchers like that. They're one possession games. I mean, that's not something to overlook. And if I'm Cleveland, you're playing with house money. You're double-digit point underdog. You got the playoff win for the first time since they relocated. It's the first time you've been in the playoff in 18 years. You get your head coach back. It's going to be a huge boost for them. Don't be surprised if there are a couple trick plays in their bag, maybe a special teams play where they try to steal possession, onside kicks, something of that nature. They got to go in here. They can't give Kansas City too much respect. I mean, they're the Super Bowl champs, but they're definitely beatable. This is a team that you shouldn't be scared of.
And there's something about a team that goes into a game playing with house money, because obviously not many people expected Cleveland to be where they are right now.
They overcame a ton last week. I mean, more than probably any wild card team ever in terms of obstacles in such a short span.
Maybe aside from being down 35-3. And
okay, but I'm saying in terms of personnel, of course.
All right, so it is a 10-point line. I think both of us are on the Browns to cover. Are we both on the Chiefs to actually win, though?
Yeah, I'll take the Chiefs.
I'm going to take the Chiefs to win, Browns to cover. And what do we like with 57?
I would lean under. That's a really high number. I mean, I think it's going to be Kansas City plays really fast, but I mean, Cleveland controls the ball better than anyone. I think it's not going to be a ton of possessions in this game. Neither of these teams turn the ball over a ton. So I'm going to go. I like the under there too.
The Browns aren't going to have those short fields that they were able to capitalize on this past week.
They need 9-minute drives this game.
Yeah,
they need
and they're fully capable of doing that a couple times a game. So if you get 2 8.5-minute drives, that's already more than 25% of the game.
Yeah.
All right. So both of us are on the same page. Chiefs win, Browns cover under 57. And to wrap up, we got the Old Man Bowl.
History Channel.
Oh my goodness, we've got Tom Brady and Drew Brees Part 3. Brees and the Saints have come out on top in the first two matchups, and especially the last time these two teams met, it was an absolute boat race on a Sunday night. Here we got the Saints are 3-point favorites, and the total is set at 52.
So a few things to watch out for. Brees, it's interesting. So when he got to New Orleans, it was record-setting offense and maybe the worst defense of all time. And they were 7-9, 8-8 team, never really broke through. And they finally built up their defense enough, and they got their first Super Bowl in franchise history. He's never gone back there since. This team's built on defense now. It's kind of come full circle. We're anticipating this is probably it for Drew Brees. This very well could be the last game of his career. He is lifetime 5-2 against Tom Brady, believe it or not. It's kind of the one guy that Brady struggled against in his career in a weird way.
Eli Manning.
Yeah. I mean, forgot about that one. But yeah, I mean,
Eli Manning actually had a winning record against Tom Brady. He was 3-2, including playoffs.
That's great. But Brady, I mean, he's never been swept in a regular season until he went against the Saints this year in Breeze. And a lot of people have the narrative of it's tough to beat a team 3 times. And I'm in the same line of thinking, but going back in the history of the NFL, this same scenario is played out 32 times. 21 of them, the team that swept them in the regular season won. So that's 2/3. I think
all these you always hear the narrative. Oh, it's so hard to beat a team 3 times in a season. Well, it's easier. It's easier than winning 2 and then losing 1.
Sometimes you just match up with the team really well. And
Right.
the second time these teams played, it was AB's first game. I think it was a little bit of a circus in Tampa Bay. But, I mean, in every facet of the game, they were completely outplayed and outcoached. And Tampa Bay, I mean, they look completely different now. They have put up historic numbers the last month of the year offensively. And they proved it against a big-time defense last week in Washington. It's going to be the same task this week against New Orleans. I expect them to put up points. I'm looking at Todd Bowles. Last time they played, it was rushing 3, rushing 4, soft zone coverage, and Drew Brees was picking them apart. I'm pressing those guys. I'm making Drew Brees throw into tight windows. He doesn't have the same arm as he used to. He doesn't really throw the football down the field as much anymore. So I'm putting a lot more pressure than Todd Bowles did the first time. They're usually a very happy blitz team. The second time they played, they weren't, and they played right into Brees' hands.
Oh yeah, and I mean it was 28-0 before you could even blink. I think it would after 20 minutes it was 28-0. Not as good as what the Browns did. They did it in only 13 minutes. But one big thing that I don't think enough people haven't been mentioning is the first 2 games we saw the Saints be able to generate a big pass rush against Tom Brady, and we know that especially an interior pass rush puts Tom Brady off of his spot and off of his game. Trey Hendrickson, it doesn't look like he's going to be playing this weekend again. And he was, especially in that second game, he had 4 sacks? I think he had 4 sacks against Brady.
That was
in that
who
second game.
Arians was talking trash about after the first game. Donovan Smith had his hands full week 1, and Arians said, yeah, well, Donovan Smith had his doors blown off against their worst D lineman, against the worst guy on that New Orleans D line. And Trey Hendrickson goes out and has 4 sacks the second game and had 11.5 sacks. And he's the complimentary pass rusher.
Right.
To Cam Jordan. I mean, their D line's legit. And they've gone back Sheldon Rankins in the past month. So, I mean, Hendrickson's a huge hit.
It is. But I think this defensive group is just so well coached. They're a group that has been together for a while. The core of that defense has.
I'm surprised Dennis Allen hasn't gotten any traction for head coaching jobs. He's done a great job.
I mean, it could be one of those where you say maybe they know more than we know about Sean Payton and his longevity, and maybe it could be if Brees retires, maybe we see Sean Payton retire and Allen be waiting in the wings to take over. That could just be an internal agreement that they have there. All right, so it's a 3-point spread and a 52-point total.
I will go with the over. I mean, Taylor Heinecke played great, but there's just something wrong with this Tampa Bay defense. I think they're really susceptible to the pass, and without Vita Vea, they just haven't looked the same at all. So I feel very comfortable with the over here. And I'm going to take Tampa Bay to win, actually. I'm going to take Tampa outright. I think if it's going to be a high-scoring game, that plays right into their hands. I like them in like a 35-31, 31-28 kind of game.
Oh, we are going against each other everywhere in this one. I'm taking New Orleans to win and cover, and I'm taking the under. I mean, I can see this game going over. But I can also see this being one of those games where New Orleans is going to play. And we've seen in the past New Orleans be this high up-tempo team, get up and down the field. We have to put up as many points as we can because our defense isn't going to be able to create many stops. They know that their defense is going to – and they've had success against Brady this year. I just don't see this being a very high-scoring game. I can see this being one of those ball control games by New Orleans, and we've seen the past couple weeks Tampa Bay be reliant on the big chunk plays, and that just doesn't happen against New Orleans.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you there. They're going to have to play a lot. They're going to have to play a lot smaller, a lot more like small ball, kind of what Brady was conducive to in New England, a lot of quick game stuff. But a lot of people are overblowing the 20-yard passes down the field with Brady. In the reality of it, his air yards aren't that much different. He's completing a lot in the 8 to 15-yard range, those play action passes in the intermediate game. And I mean, those guys are so good after the catch on his team that they're turning into 20-yard completions.
Right.
They have to dominate the intermediate game. Their play action has to be spot on. They're going to have to get a little bit from the run game. Ronald Jones is slated to play, I think, right?
Yeah.
So he's going to be a little bit of a boost in the run game. Fournette's been better as of late. They have to get a little bit of something on the ground. And I think it's just a really tall order to cover all three of these receivers at the same time. There's going to be a mismatch somewhere. They just got to find it.
Right, but it's also was AB on the? I don't think he had.
It was his first game in the second game, right. And that was the game. He was telling him what to do.
Right, and the narrative, the narrative was, oh, look, they brought in Antonio Brown, and this is what their offense became. That's exactly right. That's right.
I think Arians was a little bit trigger happy and way too excited and was throwing the ball left and right down the field and way too aggressive of a game plan against a really sound defense, and he came back to bite him. He's got to be way more patient.
Which isn't necessarily his brand of football.
Yeah. I think they've been better the past few weeks, at least in terms of running the football. I don't think they're nearly as risky or biscuit as Arians' offenses usually are. The chances of all four of my picks happening, obviously not great, but if that were to happen, you get 4 MVPs to go through. You get Brady, Rodgers, Lamar, and Mahomes. Has that happened before? Probably not. That would be pretty cool.
It would definitely set up a great narrative for
any which way. It's going to be awesome. Any which way, it's going to be great.
Yeah, let's just. I know the story would be great, but I don't want to see the Browns in there.
I thought about that.
I don't want to see that. And to be honest,
what if you got Browns Bills though? What if you got Browns Bills? That would be like the two craziest fan bases, most deserving fan bases going at it to go to the Super Bowl. That would be cool. Yeah, I'm with you on the Rams. I love their defense. I think Brandon Staley is a mastermind and should be a head coach next year. I don't need to see Jared Goff go play New Orleans or Tampa Bay. I don't need to see that.
As long as if the Packers are able to beat the Rams, I think whether it's Rodgers Brady or Rodgers Breeze, I actually think that the better matchup for Green Bay would be New Orleans. Because I think getting them out of the elements. Brady, we know, is used to the cold. It's not going to bother him.
And that was the worst game of the year by far. Tampa Bay. The game was over in the second quarter.
Yeah, and it was. My memory serves me right. It was 10-0 Green Bay, and then what was it? 40-something points in a row.
It was 38. It was 38 unanswered, and Rodgers threw a pick six, and then 2 plays later throws another pick. He had 4 or 5 on the entire year. It just doesn't happen. That game would be awesome. I was gonna say, Breeze and Rodgers, you can't go wrong. Any which way you split it, except for the Rams, Browns, Bills, I'll take. Browns, Ravens, I don't.
AFC, a divisional game. In the on Championship Sunday is good football.
And after that Monday night game, that might have been the game of the year too.
Oh yeah. So All right, you've
Just no Rams. All right, so just no Rams.
just no Rams. Yeah. if we don't get Rams, then we'll have
We're happy.
We'll have two great storylines for Championship Sunday. All right, it's gonna wrap it up for us. Again, make sure you're following us on Twitter, rstern33 at Derek Mountain. Backsportspage.com is where you can find all of our work. I'm actually going to have some hockey stuff going up this week, as well as mock draft for the NFL, as more and more teams' final destinations for where they're going to be picking are set. We're going to have actually a bunch of staff members getting together and doing mock drafts throughout the whole year. I know it's something everybody loves doing until they read comments from everyone else because you screwed up their team somehow.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I know. Was it Ryan Roberts? I think from Rise and Draft. I was talking with him about his mock draft that he put out earlier today. And he had Devontae Smith dropping all the way down to 18 for the second Miami Dolphins pick. And so I told him two things. I said, first of all, there's a better chance that he gets taken at 3 by Miami than him still being on the board at number 18. And I said, if you just wait for Giants Twitter to come out and see this and see them and see you having the Giants passing on Devontae Smith, they're going to come at you with torches.
So I saw something today too, where it was like it was an article about Devontae Smith, and it was like he could very well fall out of the top 10. We're already starting these narratives with maybe the greatest college receiver ever. Like, did we not just watch the same game? I mean, look, I still have my questions about his weight and being a high volume guy. Getting 8-10 catches a game at his size is a tall order, but also look at Marvin Harrison. I mean,
right.
Jerry Rice wasn't big. Jerry Rice wasn't big. So it's, I mean, like, I get the scare. I get even taking Jamar Chase over him. His ceiling's probably higher. I mean, in terms of athletic profile, but like, are we really gonna do this until April? That Devontae Smith, and I hope. I mean, there might not be a combine. I hope he doesn't go to the combine if there is one, because he's not going to run the fastest 40. He's going to weigh 170 pounds, and everyone's going to keep doing this.
Yeah, I've heard plenty of people put the comps on Marvin Harrison, especially with the lower half of their bodies, that they were just frail thin. But when you can't keep up with somebody, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
and his ability at 175 pounds to get off of the line of scrimmage. And I know you don't see a whole lot of press coverage in college football, but his ability to get off of the line of scrimmage at 175 pounds is unbelievable. And he made Chris Wade. I mean, throughout the whole season, we really saw Wade he struggled, and he showed
not outside corner.
He's a slot corner, and he's going to be a really, really good slot corner as long as that's where a team is going to put him in the first 2 years of his career, because it's a lot easier to look good when you have Damon Arnett and
Marshawn Lattimore and Jeff Okudah,
Jeff Okudah and Damon Arnett playing.
This is the first year they don't have a superstar at corner. All I have to say to the Devontae Smith haters is look at Sarkisian and how he used them. Look at the 12 catches he had in the first half. Probably six of them were bubbles. I mean, they're moving him in motion every single play. they're easy touches. It's stuff where he's not taking huge hits and he's running out of bounds. He's ducking into a tackle, and there are ways to conserve receivers. I just think it depends on the offensive guy he's paired with, but like he's the most decorated and the best college receiver of all time. It's not a question anymore.
I mean, that second touchdown that he had where he went in motion from left to the right, then he went back to the left, and then he outruns the guy going back to the right.
That's just play calling. I mean, and he outflanked the Ohio State guy, but like NFL guys have to take a note of that. That's how you deploy a superstar like Devontae Smith. I'm really intrigued by him. I mean, as an Eagles fan, would not be too sad if he fell to us. But I think Miami should take him at 3 with Tua. I think that would be a dream come true. But we'll see. He's definitely going to be a very polarizing prospect already.
That he is. All right, so it's going to wrap it up. Again, follow us, and let's have some fun. Again, no Rams. And we'll have a lot of fun talking next week.
Yes, we will.
All right. Be well, everybody. Enjoy football this weekend, and have a great one. Stay safe. It's going to be a real crazy week. Let's all try and stay sane and have fun watching some football, and go watch some hockey too. Got some. We got your Flyers with a big win. To open up against Pittsburgh. My Rangers get the Islanders tomorrow night. All ready to go. I'm psyched. So let's have some fun, and we'll talk next week. All right. Be well.